I'm Daniel, 32 years old, and last month, I finally got promoted to Director of Operations after 5 years of 70-hour work weeks. I invited my entire family to celebrate at Morton's Steakhouse, reserved a private room even. Nobody showed, not one person. A week later, my mom had the audacity to Venmo, request me for $2,900 for my dad's retirement party. I sent her 1 penny with a message that changed everything. The next day, police officers were pounding on my front door. Before I continue, if you're watching this, drop a like and comment where you're viewing from. My story might just save your relationships. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I always felt like I existed in the shadow of expectations rather than in the warmth of unconditional love. My father, Richard, built his reputation as a meticulous accountant at Anderson & Klein, one of the city's prestigious firms. His spreadsheets were flawless, his clients loyal, and his standards impossibly high, especially for his middle child. "Numbers don't lie, Daniel," he'd say whenever I'd bring home anything less than an A in math. And neither do results. The problem was nothing I achieved ever seemed to qualify as a satisfactory result in his eyes. My mother, Karen, operated as my father's social secretary, public relations manager, and ego booster. Her calendar was perpetually filled with charity luncheons, neighborhood association meetings, and dinner parties, where she'd showcase their perfectly curated life. I was expected to perform like a trained SEAL at these gatherings, polite, presentable, and preferably silent unless asked about my academic achievements. The only person who saw me as more than a reflection of my parents' expectations was my younger sister, Emma, 4 years, my junior. She somehow developed an emotional intelligence that seemed alien to our family's DNA. "They're broken people trying to look whole," she once whispered to me, after our father berated me for choosing business administration over accounting in college. Emma had her own struggles with our parents, but we formed an alliance in the emotional wasteland of our childhood home. My older brother Jason, 3 years, my senior, took a different approach. He followed our father's footsteps, precisely majoring in accounting, joining a competing firm after graduation, and adopting the same dismissive attitude toward any path that diverged from his own. He was the golden child, the one who understood family legacy, as our father often proclaimed during holiday dinners. College became my first real taste of freedom. I worked 30 hours weekly at the campus bookstore while maintaining a full course load, determined to minimize student loans and prove I could succeed without their financial support. My father had offered to pay my tuition, but only if I switched to accounting. I refused. "You're making a mistake," he said when I told him I was staying in business administration with a focus on operations management. "That's a fancy title for a glorified supervisor." After graduation, which my parents and Jason skipped to attend a partners retreat at Lake Geneva, I landed an entry-level operations position at Logitech Solutions, a growing supply chain management company. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the growth potential was. I saw a future there that excited me. For 5 years, I poured everything into that job. When colleagues left at 5, I stayed until 8. When they took vacations, I volunteered to cover. Holidays, weekends, middle-of-the-night system, crashes, I was there. My apartment became little more than a place to shower and occasionally sleep. Dating, social life. Those luxuries belong to people with less ambition or more family connections. The pattern of family disappointments continued through these years. When I turned 30, I reserved a table for 5 at a downtown restaurant. My parents canceled 2 hours before saying Mrs. Whitfield's garden party invitation couldn't be declined. Jason didn't even bother canceling, he just didn't show. Only Emma called, genuinely distressed that her son's fever prevented her from making the 3-hour drive from Indianapolis. Each family gathering became an exercise in emotional endurance. Still, at that shipping company, my father would ask, despite knowing exactly where I worked. Jason's firm just made him the youngest senior manager in their history. No acknowledgement of my recent certification, or the fact that I was managing increasingly complex projects. Then came the announcement that changed everything, or so I thought. After 5 years of sacrifices, I was promoted to Director of Operations, leapfrogging several external candidates with more experience. My boss Carolyn personally delivered the news. "You've earned this," she said, her hand firm on my shoulder. The leadership team was unanimous. "You've demonstrated exceptional commitment and vision." My first thought, embarrassingly, wasn't about the substantial salary increase or the team of 10 I'd be leading. It was, now they'll finally see I made the right choice. Now they'll be proud. I immediately began planning a celebration worthy of this milestone. Morton's Steakhouse had a private room that could accommodate up to 12 people. I reserved it for the following Saturday evening, paying a $500 deposit without hesitation. This would be special. The invitations went out 3 weeks in advance, elegant electronic cards with all the details. I personally called each family member to confirm. "This is important to me," I told my mother when she seemed hesitant. "I'd really appreciate everyone being there." "Of course, honey," she replied with the same tone she used when placating difficult neighbors. "We wouldn't miss it." I spent $300 on a new suit, dark blue, with subtle pinstripes that the salesperson assured me projected executive presence. I rehearsed what I'd say when making a toast, practicing in my bathroom mirror like an awkward teenager preparing for a first date. "I want to thank you all for your support." I began knowing the words rang hollow, but desperately wanting them to become true. Emma called 2 days before the dinner. "I'm trying to find a sitter," she explained, genuine frustration in her voice. "Tyler has a soccer tournament, but I'll do everything I can to be there, I promise." My parents and Jason all confirmed they would attend when I called the day before. "Looking forward to it," my father said perfunctorily. 6 o'clock, you said." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that this achievement, something even Jason hadn't accomplished at his age, might finally bridge the chasm between my family's expectations and my chosen path. Saturday arrived with perfect early autumn weather, crisp enough for my new suit to be comfortable without a coat, the Chicago skyline sharp against a cloudless blue sky. I scheduled a morning haircut at an upscale barber shop, splurging on the full treatment, including a hot towel shave. The barber whistled when I mentioned my promotion. "Director by 32. That's impressive, man," he said, the kind of straightforward acknowledgement I'd never received from my father. Somebody's doing something right. I arrived at Morton's 45 minutes early, partly from anxiety and partly to ensure everything was perfect. The private dining room gleamed with polished wood and sparkling glassware. I'd pre-ordered 2 bottles of Dom Perignon, an extravagance that cost nearly as much as my first monthly rent out of college. The special menu I'd arranged featured premium dry-aged steaks, lobster tail editions available for anyone who wanted surf and turf. "Your guests are in for quite an evening," the manager commented while walking me through the space, "celebrating something special." "A promotion," I answered, unable to suppress a smile. "My family's coming to celebrate with me." At 5:45, I took my seat at the head of the table, adjusting and readjusting the sleeves of my new suit. 6 o'clock came and went. No problem, my family rarely arrived anywhere precisely on time. My father believed that executives should never be the first to arrive. It projected eagerness rather than importance. At 6:20, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Running late, traffic is insane coming from the North Shore. Start without me." I called my parents, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left an upbeat message suggesting they let me know how far away they were. The first flicker of unease crept into my stomach, but I dismissed it. Chicago traffic on a Saturday could be unpredictable. By 7 o'clock, the unease had morphed into a leaden certainty. The waitstaff had begun exchanging glances, their initial professional cheer shifting to what looked uncomfortably like pity. I ordered a Scotch, neat, expensive something to occupy my hands and give me a reason to remain at the table. "Would you like to order appetizers while waiting, sir?" the server asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Just a few more minutes," I replied, the words feeling like pebbles in my mouth. "They'll be here soon." At 7:15, my mother finally texted, "Something came up with your father's colleagues. Unfortunately, we won't make it tonight. Hope you understand. We'll celebrate another time." The casually added exclamation point felt like a slap. Before I could respond, another message arrived from Jason. Following mom and dad to their thing. Sorry bro, you know how it is. I did know how it was. My father's colleague thing always took precedence. What I didn't expect was the next text from Emma, which clarified everything. Daniel, I'm so sorry I couldn't make it. Ethan has a fever of 103. But I just saw mom's Instagram story there at the country club for some impromptu gathering with dad's partners. It wasn't a work emergency. I'm furious for you. The moment crystallized with painful clarity. They'd chosen an unplanned social event over my carefully arranged celebration. The knowledge settled over me like a heavy winter coat, familiar, expected, yet still suffocating. I faced a decision: leave and preserve what remained of my dignity, or stay and prove to myself that their absence wouldn't diminish my achievement. Pride, or perhaps stubbornness, kept me in my chair. I'd like to order now, I told the hovering server. I'll be dining alone. Of course, sir, she replied, her professional mask firmly in place. The other guests won't be joining. No, I said simply. They had a more important engagement. I ordered the most expensive items on the menu: a 40-ounce tomahawk ribeye lobster tail, black truffle mashed potatoes, creamed spinach, and a $120 glass of Cabernet. If I was paying for 11 empty chairs, I would at least enjoy a meal worthy of my promotion. The restaurant manager approached as I was cutting into perfectly seared beef that I could barely taste. Is everything to your satisfaction, sir? He asked, his tone gentle, in a way that suggested he understood more than I wanted him to. The food is excellent, I answered, avoiding his eyes. Please extend my compliments to the chef. Of course. And congratulations on your promotion. That's a significant achievement. His sincere acknowledgement nearly undid me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My phone rang as I was mechanically working through a piece of lobster. Emma's name appeared on the screen. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. If Ethan wasn't so sick. It's fine, I interrupted, not wanting her genuine regret to crack my carefully maintained composure. Kids come first. You're the only one with a legitimate reason. They're posting pictures, Daniel. Mom, Dad, Jason, all smiling with the Hendersons and Blakemores. It's disgusting. I commented, asking why they weren't at your celebration, and Mom deleted it immediately. I watched a family at a nearby table, parents and 3 adult children laughing over shared desserts. The father had his arm around his daughter's shoulders. The mother was wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. It was like watching a foreign film without subtitles, recognizable as human interaction, but incomprehensible in its emotional language. I'm used to it, I told Emma, surprised by how hollow my voice sounded. When the check arrived, I signed without looking at the total. Over $1,000 for an empty celebration. I left a 30% tip. The server had maintained perfect professionalism despite the awkwardness of serving a party of 1 in a room meant for 12. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and quiet radio. My apartment, usually a refuge of peaceful minimalism, felt particularly empty that night. I hung my new suit carefully, knowing I'd never wear it again without remembering this evening. I considered calling my parents to confront them, but realized there would be no point. They wouldn't understand why I was upset. My father would dismiss it as oversensitivity. My mother would offer vague promises of making it up to me. Jason would echo whatever our parents said. Instead, I poured a glass of bourbon, sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights, and accepted a truth I'd been avoiding for years. They wouldn't change because they saw nothing wrong with their behavior. The problem had never been that I chose the wrong career or failed to meet some objective standard of success. The problem was that nothing I achieved would ever compete with the narrative they'd already written, a narrative in which Jason was the successful son and I was the disappointment who chose the wrong path. For the first time, I wondered if that narrative was worth trying to change. Monday morning arrived with the familiar ping of my 5 a.m. alarm. I followed my usual routine: coffee, protein shake, quick workout, shower, but something had shifted internally. The weekend's disappointment had settled into a strange, calm clarity. I dressed with particular care for my first official day as director of operations. The blue suit stayed in the closet. Instead, I chose a charcoal gray ensemble that felt more authentically me. Walking into Logitech's headquarters, I was greeted by a security guard who'd seen me arrive early and leave late for 5 years. "Morning, Director Walker," he said with a genuine smile. "Congratulations on the promotion. Well deserved." "Thanks, Henry," I replied, his simple acknowledgement warming me more than he could know. The marketing team had decorated my new office door with a congratulatory banner. Inside, my assistant, Lydia, had arranged a basket of gourmet coffee and snacks beside a card signed by my entire team. These people who knew my work ethic and contributions celebrated my success without reservation. Throughout the morning, colleagues stopped by to offer congratulations. Each time, someone inevitably asked, "Did you do anything special to celebrate?" I crafted a polite fiction. Just a quiet dinner with some close friends. I said the lie becoming easier with each telling. Nothing fancy. My new office represented everything my promotion meant: corner location, large windows, sleek modern furniture, replacing the utilitarian desk I'd used for years. I spent the first hour arranging my belongings, placing my business school diploma prominently on the wall. My father's voice echoed faintly. "A business degree is just an expensive piece of paper." I straightened the frame with deliberate precision. The day filled quickly with meetings, emails, and introductory sessions with my direct reports. 10 people now looked to me for guidance and leadership, a responsibility I took seriously. Each team member brought different strengths and concerns to our individual meetings, and I listened carefully, knowing that my success now depended on theirs. Carolyn, the CEO who had championed my promotion, invited me to a late afternoon coffee. "How's the first day treating you, Director?" she asked, her formidable intelligence tempered by genuine warmth. "It's overwhelming in the best possible way," I admitted. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." "You earned it, Daniel. When I started this company 12 years ago, I looked for people who solved problems instead of creating them. You've consistently been the former." I thought about sharing the weekend's disappointment, but stopped myself. This accomplished woman who had built a $30 million company from nothing didn't need to hear about my family drama. Instead, I asked about her vision for the operations department, taking notes as she outlined ambitious expansion plans. In her worldview, my role wasn't peripheral, but central to the company's future. The week progressed with no contact from my parents or Jason. Only Emma texted daily, checking in and offering support. Thursday evening, my team insisted on taking me out for drinks to properly celebrate the promotion. To Daniel, my senior logistics manager, toasted, raising her glass. "The only boss I've had who actually understands what we do down in the trenches." We shared stories, laughed, and strategized about upcoming projects. These people, some I'd worked alongside for years, others newly under my management, showed more genuine interest in my success than my own family ever had. The contrast was both painful and illuminating. Back at my apartment that night, I looked around the space I'd barely had time to make a home. Minimalist furnishings, few personal touches, walls bare, except for a single framed photo of Emma and her son. No family portraits. No holiday gathering images. The absence spoke volumes about priorities, both theirs and increasingly mine. Saturday morning, I called Emma while preparing breakfast. "How's the new director job?" she asked, the pride in her voice unmistakable. "It's challenging, but good," I replied. "How's Ethan feeling?" "Better. Back to terrorizing the neighborhood on his bike." She paused. "Have you heard from them?" Not a word. No acknowledgement of missing the dinner. No congratulations on the promotion. Radio silence. Mom posted about Jason's new client yesterday. Some big tax consulting contract. The information didn't hurt as it once might have. Good for him. "You don't sound upset." "I'm starting to think their approval isn't worth the price it demands." Monday brought my first significant test as director, overseeing the launch of an automated routing system that would increase delivery efficiency by 20%. The project had been my initiative as senior manager, and now I'd see it implemented under my directorship. The launch succeeded beyond projections with minimal disruption to existing operations. By Friday, we were already seeing metrics that exceeded our targets. The executive team took notice, with the CFO personally emailing congratulations on the positive financial implications. That evening, the project team gathered for a celebratory dinner at a casual lakefront restaurant. Genuine camaraderie flowed alongside good food and drink. No one checked their watch or had something more important arise. When the topic turned to family, I listened to stories of supportive parents and siblings, offering vague comments about my own situation without revealing the emptiness behind them. The weekend stretched before me 48 hours, without the structure and purpose that work provided. On impulse, I booked a Saturday consultation with an interior designer. "Your space needs to reflect who you are," she said, surveying my sparse apartment. "What matters to you? What brings you joy?" The questions caught me off guard. I'd spent so long trying to earn external validation that I'd neglected to develop my own aesthetic preferences. We spent 3 hours discussing colors, textures, and layouts. For the first time, I considered my living space as an extension of myself, rather than merely a place to rest between workdays. Sunday morning, I had a virtual session with Dr. Matthews, the therapist I'd started seeing after my 30th birthday debacle. "How did the promotion dinner go?" he asked, his expression suggesting he already anticipated the answer. I detailed the empty room, the expensive meal, eaten alone, the country club photos posted, while I sat waiting. "And how are you processing that?" His question was gentle, but direct. "Honestly, with less surprise than I should feel. It's like I've been expecting this disappointment my entire life. And now that it's happened exactly as feared, there's almost relief. The uncertainty is gone." What uncertainty? Whether they'll ever see me, the actual me, not the me they wanted as worthy of their time and attention. And your conclusion? They won't. And I'm starting to question whether I want them to. We explored this shift in perspective for the remainder of the session. For years, I'd chased parental approval like a mirage in the desert, always visible in the distance, but disappearing upon approach. What might life look like if I stopped running toward that illusion? That evening, I systematically unfollowed my parents and Jason on social media. I didn't block them, that felt unnecessarily dramatic, but I removed their constant digital presence from my daily life. I kept Emma as my sole family connection. I booked a 2-week vacation to Portugal for the following month, something I'd always wanted to do but had postponed, partly due to work demands and partly due to a vague sense that solo travel wasn't normal for someone my place. Age. Now the prospect of exploring ancient cities and coastal villages at my own pace felt exhilarating rather than lonely. For the first time since my childhood, I began considering what I wanted, rather than what might finally earn my parents' approval. The freedom was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. As Sunday evening faded into darkness, I realized I hadn't thought about my father's dismissive comments or my mother's conditional affection for several hours, the longest such period I could remember. Perhaps the promotion's greatest value wasn't the title or salary, but the clarity it had provided. I was capable of building a meaningful life without the validation I'd sought for so long. I fell asleep that night with a profound sense of peace, which made what happened the following Sunday all the more jarring. Sunday mornings had become a ritual of self-care, premium coffee, brewed slowly, the New York Times, digital edition, classical music, streaming through my apartment. This particular morning, I'd just settled into my balcony chair when my phone buzzed with a notification. "Karen Walker has requested $2,900, your share for Dad's retirement party." I stared at the screen, certain I'd misread something. But no, there it was, a Venmo request from my mother for nearly $3,000, with no prior discussion. No context beyond those 5 terse words. The timestamp showed 7:12 a.m., early enough to suggest urgency, but not so early as to seem deliberately intrusive. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. After 2 weeks of silence following their no-show at my celebration, this was their first communication. I took a screenshot and sent it to Emma with a single question mark. Her response came within minutes. "Are you kidding me? This is the first you've heard from them." Before I could reply, she sent a link to my mother's Facebook page. There, in a public post, dated 3 days earlier, was an elaborate announcement. After 35 dedicated years at Anderson, and Klein Richard Walker will be celebrating his retirement with a gala event at Lakeside Country Club on Can, November 12th. Join us in honoring his distinguished career. The comment section overflowed with congratulations and RSVPs. A photo showed my parents beaming beside an ice sculpture sample, a dollar sign of all the tasteless choices, while consulting with an event planner. My phone rang Emma. "This is beyond even their normal level of self-absorption," she fumed. "They completely blow off your promotion. Dinner, then expect you to help fund Dad's retirement extravaganza without even a conversation." "Has she requested money from you too?" I asked. $1,500, Emma confirmed. "Apparently, I get the single mother discount. She texted yesterday saying she needs confirmation of my contribution by Monday because they're paying deposits." I was still processing this information when my mother's text arrived. "Daniel, did you see my Venmo request? The party planner needs final numbers by tomorrow. Your brother has already transferred his share." Of course, Jason had already paid. The Golden Son wouldn't hesitate. I didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to research exactly what my share would be funding. The Lakeside Country Club's event packages started at $20,000 for their smallest venue. The grand ballroom experience they appeared to be planning would easily exceed $25,000. My mother called while I was reviewing these figures. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to speak calmly. Her message dripped with practiced sweetness. "Daniel, honey, I know you're busy with your new position, but we need to finalize the budget for your father's retirement celebration. It's important that all family members contribute. It's what we've always done for significant milestones. Call me back as soon as possible." Always done. This was the first I'd heard of this family tradition. No one had contributed to my college graduation dinner, which I'd paid for myself. No one had offered to help with my 30th birthday celebration, also self-funded. The selective memory was staggering. When I finally returned her call that afternoon, she answered on the first ring. "There you are. Did you get my messages? We need to confirm your contribution today." "Mom, this is the first I'm hearing about Dad's retirement party," I said carefully, "and the first contact from any of you since you all skipped my promotion dinner 2 weeks ago." A practiced sigh. "Daniel, you know how these impromptu work functions can be. Your father couldn't refuse the senior partners. Now about the retirement gala. You didn't even acknowledge missing my dinner. No apology, no mention of my promotion. We've been incredibly busy planning this event. Your father deserves a proper send-off after 35 years. We can talk about your dinner another time." The dismissal was so casual, so complete, that it momentarily left me speechless. Now she continued, filling my silence. "We've allocated costs proportionally. Jason's contributing $3,500 as the eldest. We're asking $2,900 from you, which I think is more than fair considering your recent promotion." The emphasis on recent promotion carried a clear implication I now had no financial excuse to refuse. "Mom, you and Dad never showed up to celebrate that promotion. You haven't even said congratulations." Daniel, her voice took on the patronizing tone I'd heard throughout childhood. "We've done everything for you and your siblings. Put you through college, supported your career choices even when they weren't what we hoped for. This is what family does. We show up when it matters." The irony was so thick, I could hardly breathe through it. "When it matters," I repeated, "like my promotion dinner." "That's completely different," she dismissed. "This is your father's retirement after 3.5 decades. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event." Before I could respond, my phone signaled another call. My father. "Mom, I need to go. We'll talk later." I switched calls, bracing myself. "Daniel." My father's voice carried its usual authoritative tone. Your mother tells me you're being difficult about the retirement party contribution. No greeting, no congratulations on my promotion. Just immediate disappointment in my failure to meet expectations. I just received a Venmo request this morning with no prior discussion, I explained. $2,900 is a significant amount to demand without conversation. It's not a demand, it's an expectation, he corrected. Family supports family. Jason transferred his portion immediately. This is about respecting what I've built over 35 years. Does family support include attending important celebrations I couldn't stop myself from asking? A dismissive scoff. If you're still upset about missing a dinner, you need to examine your priorities. My retirement impacts our entire family legacy. Your promotion is a nice personal achievement, but hardly comparable. The conversation continued in this vein for 10 excruciating minutes. My career was a nice personal achievement. My financial considerations were excuses. My hesitation showed I never truly valued family commitment. After hanging up, I received a text from Jason. Don't be selfish for once. Just send the money. Selfish. The accusation stung precisely because it inverted reality so completely. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their approval while receiving minimal emotional investment in return. Curious about the scale of this family legacy celebration, I explored social media further. My mother had created a Facebook event page showing nearly 200 invited guests, colleagues, country club members, distant relatives, and social connections. The Hendersons and Blakemores, whose impromptu gathering had taken precedence over my promotion dinner, featured prominently on the guest list. I called Emma again. Have you found out anything more about this retirement party? Oh, it gets better, she said, anger evident in her voice. I spoke with Aunt Judith. Apparently Anderson & Klein traditionally hosts retirement parties for departing partners. Dad turned down the firm's event to have his own, more exclusive celebration. So the firm would have covered this. Completely. But that wouldn't let Mom invite her entire social circle or control every detail. Further research revealed my parents had purchased a vacation condo in Naples, Florida 3 months earlier, a fact they hadn't shared with me. Meanwhile, I was still paying off student loans from the business degree my father had dismissed as worthless. By evening, the pressure intensified. My mother created a family group chat titled Retirement Gala Planning, which included my parents, Jason, Emma, and me. The transparent attempt to leverage group dynamics was followed by a steady stream of messages from extended family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, all expressing concern about my hesitation to support your father's special day. My Aunt Linda's message was particularly telling. Your mother is very upset by your reluctance, Daniel. After everything they've done for you, this seems like a small way to show gratitude. The narrative being constructed was clear. I was the ungrateful son refusing to honor his father's career. No mention of the neglected promotion dinner. No acknowledgement of the lack of congratulations or support. Just another example of Daniel failing to meet family expectations. As midnight approached, I sat at my desk reviewing my financial situation. The promotion had come with a substantial salary increase, but I was still catching up from years of prioritizing career growth over financial comfort. The $2,900 wouldn't bankrupt me, but it represented more than the cost. It symbolized a one-way relationship I'd accepted for too long. For the first time, I clearly saw the pattern I gave emotionally, financially, and practically, while receiving conditional approval at best and outright dismissal at worst. The pattern wouldn't change because they saw nothing wrong with it. The question was whether I would continue to participate in this uneven exchange. I closed my eyes and imagined sending the money. I could picture my mother's satisfied nod, my father's brief acknowledgement quickly, followed by criticism of some minor detail I'd overlooked. I could see myself at the gala introduced as our son, he works in logistics or something similar, while Jason received glowing introductions as following in his father's footsteps. Then, I imagined something different, saying no, setting a boundary. The anxiety this produced was nearly physical in its intensity, but beneath it, lay something unfamiliar and compelling: self-respect. Sleep eluded me, as I wrestled with decades of conditioning. By dawn, my apartment reflected my internal state: coffee cups scattered across surfaces, notepad filled with half-formed thoughts, laptop open to my banking information. I drafted and deleted dozens of responses ranging from coldly professional to emotionally raw. At 7, I called Michael, my best friend since college, and the only person besides Emma who truly understood my family dynamics. "They're hitting you up for retirement party money after ghosting your promotion dinner," he summarized after I explained the situation. "That's next-level entitlement." "I know I should just pay it to keep the peace," I said, hating the automatic deference in my voice. "Should you, though?" Michael challenged. "What peace are you keeping exactly? The peace where they consistently disregard your achievements while expecting your support for theirs? That doesn't sound peaceful. It sounds like surrender." His words crystallized something I'd been circling all night. This wasn't about money. It was about a fundamental imbalance I'd accepted as normal for 32 years. I spent the morning reviewing my financial history with my parents. College, I'd worked part-time, while Jason had received full support. Birthdays, token gifts for me, versus lavish presents for my brother. Family vacations. Jason invited to international trips, while I received last-minute invitations to local events. In my desk, I found birthday cards from the past decade, each containing my mother's elegant handwriting, expressing generic well wishes, but rarely including gifts. Meanwhile, social media documented Jason's birthday celebrations, expensive watches, weekend getaways, golf club memberships. The evidence mounted with each hour. This wasn't an isolated incident, but the latest in a lifelong pattern. I drafted multiple responses throughout the day. The first was an emotional 5 paragraphs detailing years of perceived slights. Too reactive. The second, a formal explanation of my financial situation. Too defensive. The third, a simple, no, too abrupt. By evening, I'd settled at my desk with a clarity that felt almost foreign. I opened the Venmo app and considered my options. I could ignore the request, which would prompt more calls and messages. I could pay the full amount, reinforcing the pattern. I could negotiate a smaller contribution, a half measure, that would satisfy no one. Or I could make a statement that couldn't be misinterpreted. With steady hands, I selected pay rather than decline, but entered $0.01 as the amount. In the note field, I typed, "This is all you've ever given me." My finger hovered over the blue payment button. 5 words and 1 penny, a response that would undoubtedly burn bridges. Was I ready for the consequences? I thought about the empty restaurant room, the promotion. They couldn't acknowledge the decades of seeking approval from people fundamentally incapable of giving it. I pressed pay. The transaction confirmation appeared instantly. For several minutes, I stared at the screen, alternating between nausea and a strange lightheaded relief. My hands trembled slightly, the physical manifestation of overriding 32 years of conditioning. I immediately blocked my parents' phone numbers, knowing the response would be swift and punishing. Then I composed an email to the family group. "I will not be contributing to the retirement party beyond the symbolic penny I've sent. For years, I've accepted the imbalance in our family. My achievements minimized my celebrations, ignored my value, determined by my willingness to support others without receiving support in return. When none of you showed up to celebrate my promotion 2 weeks ago, I made excuses for your absence. When you requested nearly $3,000 without acknowledging that absence or congratulating me on my achievement, the pattern became impossible to ignore. I wish you a successful retirement celebration, but I will not financially support an event honoring someone who has consistently devalued my choices and accomplishments. This boundary is non-negotiable." After sending the email, I texted Emma, "I just sent Mom 1 penny for Dad's retirement party," with a message that will likely trigger nuclear fallout, blocking their numbers temporarily. "Love you, but understand if you need to distance yourself from the situation." Her response came quickly, finally. "I'm so proud of you. Whatever happens, I'm in your corner." The immediate aftermath was physical. My hands shaking, heart racing, breathing shallow. I defied the family power structure for perhaps the first time in my life. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. Before the blocks took effect, voicemails began accumulating. My father's first message vibrated with controlled rage. "Your behavior is completely unacceptable. Call me immediately to explain yourself before this becomes irreparable." His second message, left 20 minutes later, escalated to threats. "If this is how you choose to behave, you can consider yourself cut off from this family. No inheritance, no connections, nothing. Is that what you want, Daniel? To be completely on your own?" The irony of being threatened with precisely my current reality nearly made me laugh. My email inbox filled with messages from extended family members flying monkeys, dispatched to bring the wayward son back into line. Aunt Patricia expressed deep disappointment. Uncle Robert questioned whether I was having some kind of breakdown. Cousin Jennifer suggested I apologize before it's too late. Jason's contribution came via text before I could block his number. "You've always been jealous of my relationship with Dad. This petty stunt proves you never really grew up. Mom is in tears, Dad is furious, and you've ruined what should be a celebration of his career. Congratulations on showing your true colors." My social media notifications exploded as my mother apparently began crafting her victim narrative. Though I couldn't see the original posts, due to unfollowing them, mutual connections forwarded screenshots of her vague allusions to family heartbreak and the pain when children forget their obligations. The carefully curated image of family harmony, maintained for decades despite the dysfunction beneath, was beginning to crack publicly. This, I suspected, would be unforgivable in my parents' eyes. By evening, colleagues had noticed my distraction. Rachel, my deputy director, stopped by my office around 6. "Everything okay, Daniel? You seem a million miles away today." "Family stuff," I admitted. "Nothing that will affect the department, I promise." "Family stuff has a way of affecting everything," she said kindly. "If you need to take a personal day, the team can handle things." Her simple concern nearly undid my composure. I thanked her and promised to consider it, then spent another hour staring at spreadsheets without absorbing their content. That night, alone in my apartment, I experienced the full emotional spectrum: guilt for disrupting the family system, liberation for finally speaking my truth, grief for the supportive parents. I'd never had fear of the unknown territory ahead. The conflicting emotions left me exhausted but oddly peaceful. Just before midnight, I received an email from my father. "Your behavior is childish and ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us: 1 cent and a public tantrum. You have 24 hours to apologize and fulfill your financial obligation to this family, or there will be consequences you cannot imagine." This isn't a game, Daniel. The threat was vague, but ominous. Knowing my father's connections and temperament, I assumed he meant professional consequences, calls to colleagues, attempts to undermine my reputation. I never imagined how literal those consequences would become. Tuesday proceeded with surprising normalcy. The emotional storm had left me feeling oddly centered, as though I'd weathered something profound and emerged fundamentally changed. I led a productive morning meeting, collaborated with marketing on a new logistics initiative, and even found myself laughing genuinely at lunch with colleagues. The drive home felt lighter somehow. I'd planned a quiet evening takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, maybe start that novel I'd been meaning to read, instead of bringing work home. Small acts of self-care that suddenly seemed possible now that I wasn't constantly seeking external validation. As I turned onto my street, I noticed a police cruiser parked near my building entrance. Not entirely unusual in Chicago, but uncommon enough in my quiet neighborhood to register. I parked in my assigned spot, gathered my briefcase, and headed toward the entrance. 2 uniformed officers stood near the door, consulting a notepad. As I approached, they looked up with the alert assessment of law enforcement evaluating a potential situation. Daniel Walker, the taller officer asked. Yes, I responded, confusion, and a sudden spike of anxiety flooding my system. Had something happened to Emma or her son? I'm Officer Reynolds. This is Officer Tanner, he said, gesturing to his partner. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding a complaint that's been filed. A complaint, I echoed, genuinely bewildered. What kind of complaint? Financial dispute, Officer Tanner supplied. Specifically allegations of theft of promised funds. The realization dawned with cold clarity. My father had actually filed a police report over the retirement party contribution. This is about my father's retirement party, I stated rather than asked. The officers exchanged a glance. You're aware of the situation then? I'm aware that my father expected me to contribute nearly $3,000 to his retirement celebration without prior agreement. Yes. According to the report, you had verbally agreed to this contribution and then reneged, sending instead a token payment meant as an insult. A movement across the street caught my attention. A silver Mercedes, my parents' car, was parked under a tree, my mother's profile visible in the passenger seat. This wasn't just a police report. It was a staged confrontation. Officers, I never agreed to any contribution. I explained calmly. I received an unexpected Venmo request demanding $2,900 with no prior discussion. I declined to pay that amount. Officer Reynolds maintained a neutral expression. Do you have any documentation of the communication? I have the original Venmo request, subsequent text messages, and emails, I replied. I'd be happy to show you. I pulled up the Venmo history on my phone, displaying the original request and my 1-cent response. Then I showed the text exchange with my mother and the email thread, all carefully stored rather than deleted in case something like this occurred. There was no prior agreement, I continued. And this is at most a civil matter, not a criminal one. Officer Tanner reviewed the messages, his expression shifting subtly. These don't indicate a prior agreement, he confirmed to his partner. And there's no documentation of a verbal contract. While they conferred quietly, I noticed movement from the Mercedes. My parents were exiting the vehicle, my father's face set in the stern expression I'd known since childhood. This had been their plan all along, to embarrass me publicly, to demonstrate their power, to force compliance through humiliation. Officer Reynolds turned back to me. Mr. Walker, you're correct that this appears to be a civil matter, not a criminal one. There's no evidence of theft or fraud here. As he spoke, my parents approached my mother, affecting an expression of distress, while my father maintained rigid authority. Officers, my father began without acknowledging me, as he explained his actions. Officer Tanner addressed him professionally. Sir, we've reviewed the communication history, and there doesn't appear to be evidence of a prior agreement regarding this financial contribution. This is a civil matter between family members. He clearly understood his obligation, my father insisted. It's a family tradition to support significant celebrations. A tradition you didn't uphold 2 weeks ago, I interjected, surprising myself with my steady voice. When none of you showed up to celebrate my promotion after confirming you would attend. My mother stepped forward, tears materializing on cue. Daniel, why are you doing this to us? After everything we've sacrificed for you. The performance was masterful. The devastated mother, the dignified father, the ungrateful son. It had worked countless times throughout my childhood and early adulthood, but something fundamental had changed. What exactly have you sacrificed, Mom? I asked, my voice level. You missed my college graduation for a partner's retreat. You skipped my 30th birthday for a neighbor's garden party. You didn't show up to my promotion dinner that I specifically told you was important to me. What sacrifices are you referring to? Neighbors had begun to gather at a discreet distance, drawn by the unusual sight of police officers and raised voices. My father noticed the audience and stiffened further. This is not the place for this discussion, he said tersely. You chose the place when you filed a false police report and waited to confront me in public, I replied. You wanted witnesses to my humiliation. Well, now they can witness the truth instead. A familiar SUV pulled into the lot Jason's vehicle. Of course he would arrive as backup. The family united against the outlier just as it had always been. "What's going on?" Jason demanded as he approached. "The police actually came." "They've determined it's not a criminal matter," I explained, maintaining my composure. "There was no agreement to pay for Dad's retirement party." "You know what was expected," Jason insisted. "You're just being spiteful because you're jealous of my relationship with Dad. You always have been." The accusation was so familiar, so predictable, that it had lost its power to wound me. "I'm not jealous of your relationship, Jason. I'm just no longer willing to accept the unequal treatment." "What unequal treatment?" my father scoffed. "We've given you every opportunity." The dam finally broke. Years of carefully contained observations and feelings rushed forth in a calm, clear stream. "You paid for Jason's education, but told me I was on my own unless I studied accounting. You celebrate his career milestones while dismissing mine as nice personal achievements. You expect financial contribution to your celebrations while ignoring mine completely. You give him expensive gifts while I receive cards with no enclosures. You take him on international vacations while I get last-minute invitations to local events." My mother's theatrical tears paused as she registered that our audience now, including several neighbors I recognized, was listening intently. "That's not true," she protested weakly. "We've always treated you boys equally." "Then where were you 2 weeks ago?" I asked simply. "When I reserved a private room at Morton's to celebrate my promotion, a celebration I invited you to 3 weeks in advance, that you confirmed attendance for the day before, and that I explicitly told you was important to me." Silence fell over the small gathering. Even Jason looked uncomfortable. We had a work function arise unexpectedly. My father stated the practiced lie, revealing nothing. "It was at the country club," I corrected him. "Emma saw the photos on social media. It wasn't work, it was the Hendersons and Blakemores. You chose them over my achievement. Didn't apologize or acknowledge it, then expected me to contribute nearly $3,000 to celebrate Dad's career." Officer Reynolds cleared his throat. "As we've established, this is a civil matter. We'll be leaving you folks to sort it out. I'd suggest doing so privately rather than in the building parking lot." My father's face had darkened to a dangerous shade. The public exposure of their behavior, the dismantling of the carefully constructed facade of perfect family harmony, was precisely what they had hoped to inflict on me. Instead, they had orchestrated their own unveiling. "This discussion is over," he announced. "Daniel, your behavior today makes it clear where you stand. You are no longer welcome in this family. No holidays, no gatherings, no support when you inevitably need it." My mother stepped forward, her voice lowered but still audible to those nearby. "Your real family is cutting you off, Daniel. Remember that when your work friends move on and you're alone." The threat designed to trigger my deepest insecurities fell strangely flat. I met her gaze directly. "I cut you off last week, Mom. I'm just sorry it took me 32 years to realize I deserved better." She recoiled as though I'd slapped her. My father took her elbow and steered her toward their Mercedes, his rigid back communicating the fury he wouldn't display publicly. Jason lingered, conflicted. "You've really done it now," he said, but without his usual certainty. "They'll never forgive this." "I know," I replied, "and I've finally realized I can live with that." As they drove away, the small audience of neighbors dispersed, some nodding respectfully in my direction. The officers departed with professional nods. I entered my building feeling emptied and filled simultaneously, as though something toxic had been drained away, creating space for something healthier to grow. The morning after the parking lot confrontation, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw Emma standing there with a small suitcase and a determined expression. I opened the door immediately. "I drove straight from Indianapolis," she explained, stepping into my apartment. "After you texted about the police, I arranged for Ethan to stay with his dad for a few days. You shouldn't be alone right now." Her simple act of solidarity, driving 3 hours on a workday, moved me deeply. She unpacked in my spare room and ordered breakfast delivery while I prepared for work. You don't have to go in today, she suggested. Take a mental health day. Actually, I think work is exactly what I need, I replied. Structure, purpose, people who value my contribution, the opposite of yesterday. Over coffee, Emma shared her own decision. I've been thinking about this for months, but watching you set boundaries gave me the courage. I'm moving to Chicago in the spring. Applied for a teaching position at Northwestern last week. Ethan and I need to be near family, who actually acts like family. You'd move here. The possibility of having my sister and nephew nearby felt like an unexpected gift. It's time, she said simply, for both of us to build something better. At the office, I channeled my emotional energy into productivity. My team noticed the change, not a withdrawal, but an opening up, a willingness to share more of myself. When my executive assistant commented on the family photo missing from my desk, I'd removed the obligatory holiday portrait the previous evening. I explained I was refreshing my workspace to reflect what truly matters. That weekend, Emma and I transformed my apartment. We replaced the minimalist furniture chosen for its inoffensiveness, rather than personality, with pieces that reflected emerging preferences I'd never allowed myself to acknowledge. Deep blues replaced neutral beiges. Bookshelves filled with volumes I'd always wanted to display. Wall space previously reserved for the family photos I'd felt obligated to exhibit now showcased local art that resonated with my sensibilities. You're finally showing up in your own space, Emma observed as we arranged a particularly striking abstract piece above the fireplace. It's like watching someone come into focus. 2 weeks later, my team surprised me with a proper promotion celebration, a catered lunch in the conference room, with thoughtful gifts reflecting my actual interests rather than the sanitized version I'd presented professionally. Carolyn, the CEO, presented me with a vintage fountain pen for signing all those director-level documents, she explained. And because you mentioned collecting them once, the fact that she'd remembered a passing comment from months earlier struck me forcefully. These people, colleagues, rather than blood relations, paid attention to who I actually was. My sessions with Dr. Matthews intensified as I processed the seismic shift in my family relationships. We explored the grief that accompanied even necessary estrangement, the programmed guilt that occasionally surfaced, and the gradual development of a self-concept not defined by parental approval. You're building what therapists call your chosen family, he explained during one particularly insightful session. People who choose you for who you are, not who they demand you become. The concept resonated deeply. My social circle expanded as I accepted invitations I'd previously declined due to work commitments or family obligations. I joined a weekend hiking group, reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with, and even began dating seriously for the first time in years. Alicia, a marine biologist I met through the hiking group, approached relationships with a refreshing directness. My parents taught me that love should be unconditional, but relationships require mutual respect and effort, she explained over our third dinner together. If those aren't balanced, it's not healthy. The concept was so foreign to my family experience that I nearly asked her to repeat it. Instead, I observed how her family interactions demonstrated exactly this principle. Love freely given boundaries, respected support, flowing multidirectionally rather than hierarchically. As the holiday season approached, traditionally a period of obligation and performance in my family, I experienced both apprehension and liberation. Emma and Ethan would join me for Thanksgiving, our first holiday, as our own family unit. We planned a menu based on preferences rather than traditions, invited friends without family nearby, and established new rituals that felt authentic rather than imposed. The week before Thanksgiving, my mother attempted reconciliation via text. The family will be gathering at 1 o'clock. Your place setting will be available if you've reconsidered your position and are ready to apologize. The conditional offer attendance predicated on submission confirmed that nothing fundamental had changed. I declined politely, but firmly explaining that I'd made other plans. The subsequent silence spoke volumes. More surprising was my father's email in early December, a terse acknowledgement that my department's efficiency metrics had been mentioned positively by a business associate. Not quite congratulations, but the closest approximation he could manage. I responded with professional courtesy, maintaining the boundary while leaving space for evolution. Jason's transformation came more gradually. A lunch in January, ostensibly to discuss a mutual friend's wedding, revealed cracks in his previously unquestioning acceptance of our parents' narrative. They're still talking about the retirement party incident, he admitted, uncomfortable but honest. But watching how they handled it made me see some things differently. The way they've always treated you versus me. It's pretty obvious once you start looking. It took me 32 years to really see it, I acknowledged, and longer to stop accepting it as normal. 6 months after the confrontation, my professional success continued to grow. The automated routing system I'd implemented generated millions in savings, earning recognition industry-wide. Emma and Ethan moved into a pleasant apartment 15 minutes from mine. My relationship with Alicia deepened into something built on mutual respect and genuine understanding. The most profound changes, however, were internal. I no longer flinched when checking my phone anticipating criticism or dismissal. I stopped rehearsing conversations with my parents in my head, trying to predict and prevent disapproval. I recognized my achievements without immediately discounting them as not enough. Dr. Matthews observed this evolution during our now monthly check-ins. You've developed internal validation, he noted. Your sense of worth is no longer externally determined. Understanding my parents as products of their own upbringing helped contextualize their behavior without excusing it. My father's emotionally distant father had valued financial success above all else. My mother's family had prioritized appearances over authenticity for generations. They parented as they had been parented, a realization that allowed me to forgive without forgetting. The boundaries remained firm, but were no longer fueled by anger. I attended family gatherings selectively on my terms, engaging when healthy and withdrawing when old patterns emerged. Some extended family members respected this evolution. Others remained entrenched in the established hierarchy. I accepted both responses with equanimity. On the anniversary of my promotion and the empty celebration, I hosted a dinner for my chosen family, Emma and Ethan, close friends, colleagues who had become friends, and Alicia. As conversations and laughter flowed around my dining table, I realized that I had created precisely what I'd sought for so long: genuine connection, mutual respect, and unconditional support. The penny I'd sent, that tiny symbolic gesture of defiance, had cost me a version of family that had never truly served me. In return, it had purchased something invaluable: the freedom to become fully myself. Real family, I've learned, is defined by love and respect, not DNA. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is send that one penny reply to those who never valued you properly. Your worth isn't determined by others' recognition or approval. It exists independently, waiting for you to claim it. If my story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than conditional love or manipulative support. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? What gave you the courage to finally stand up for yourself? Drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the family you're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the strength to begin your own when you're ready.